In September of 2019, the IRS announced procedures for certain persons who have relinquished or intended to relinquish their United States citizenship and wish to be in compliance with the U.S. income tax and reporting obligations and avoid being something called a covered expatriate. Now, what a covered expatriate is, I did discuss in a previous video, and you'll see that link in the description below. Joining me today is my friends Keith Redmond, Global Advocate for the American Abroad, and John Richardson of Citizenship Solutions. John is a fellow attorney who has been really taking a principled stand against the IRS and the tax industry as a whole. And Keith has been indispensable in getting people motivated and into Congress and making a lot of noise. So we are very fortunate to have both of these fine individuals with us today. So John, I want to just sort of lead off with a question. Let's just say that you are someone who is living abroad, you've never filed a return, and you really didn't really remember the last time you were an American, but you know you're a U.S. citizenship. What's the problem with just saying, you know what, I'm going to continue as is, and I'm not going to file anything? And I don't even know if I'll renounce. Maybe I'll renounce, but I'm not going to file anything with the IRS. What's the problem with just doing that?
Okay. Is your question, what's the problem of renouncing U.S. citizenship without filing taxes? Is that your question?
Correct. Yep. Without filing taxes or do anything. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no problem at all. Anybody is free to renounce U.S. citizenship. No problem. There's no tax requirement in order to renounce. Okay. But there's always a but.
Mm-hmm.
Under the everything in the United States is taxable. Breathing, eating, renouncing U.S. citizenship, the normal things of life, right?
Yeah.
And renouncing U.S. citizenship does have tax consequences under the Internal Revenue Code. Now, specifically, if you renounce without having 5 years of tax compliance, you will be deemed to be what's called a covered expatriate. And you've talked about that, Anthony, which is essentially somebody who's deserving of punishment. The punishment can be severe. That's a bit outside the scope of our discussion today, but it is quite possible for people to renounce without tax compliance, and many people have, which is in part the reason for the new IRS procedures that came out in September.
Well, I guess my question is, have you ever heard, you've heard of the phrase accidental American?
I have.
And have you ever heard the phrase accidental Canadian?
No. I mean, only U.S. citizenship is defined by taxation.
Right. And so that's really the problem that we have as a U.S. person, that you could be a citizen and not really know it, because there's ways that you can be your citizenship by birth, even if you had no intention to be a citizen of the U.S. You're born here as a child, say when your parents were going to graduate school in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So Keith, this program, the new program that was announced in September, who's this really for? Who do you think this is really for?
That's a good question. I think it is for those Americans overseas, and I guess accidental Americans who are looking to renounce, where they go ahead and renounce, and you, John, you correct me if I'm wrong, but they go ahead and renounce and get their certificate of loss of nationality, and then at that point they can go and enter this new IRS program. And to have a clean, if I may use that term, renunciation, where they will not be a covered expatriate moving forward. Now, having said that, for people, accidental Americans, and I suppose Americans overseas who have already renounced maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I don't know if this is going to be a program for them to go ahead and retroactively, in the long term, enter the U.S. tax system. That is going to be a very hard decision for those individuals to make. I do know of accidental Americans with whom I've spoken. They are not going to do it.
Okay.
They just will not do it, because
that's really what I want to know.
To the United States.
And what's the number one reason why they tell you they're not going to do it?
The number one reason that they tell me that they're not going to do it is because, one, they don't deem themselves as American. They have no links to the United States. They have no family in the United States. They don't even have a U.S. passport. They don't even have a Social Security number. They have nothing in the United States. So they are willing to take the quote unquote risk moving forward with their certificate of loss of nationality and get on with their lives. Number one.
And
Number two, they're afraid of getting into the U.S. tax system where they're on the radar because they just don't want their information in the hands of the IRS or the U.S. government, because you never know what the future will hold.
yeah,
Those are the two reasons.
and I think and number two really seems to be a well-founded objection. That seems to be somebody who's aware of what is exactly going on, because we cannot say that the U.S. government has covered itself in any glory with international taxation. You know, we had the first 2009 offshore voluntary disclosure programs, and these programs, the first people coming forward were the people who should have been treated the best, and unfortunately, they were treated the worst. And you know, we still have cases going on that started 5 years ago. I had one case that started in 2009 and actually didn't conclude into 2017, and we pushed it along as quick as we could. And you know, the IRS just comes out with these things, and they don't think about what they can actually administer. They sort of shoot first, you know, with their threat, and then later on to say, oh yeah, you know what, we really don't have the manpower to do this. Oh well. And that was really one of the reasons why the Streamline program came out. Was it really a kinder, gentler IRS? I don't know. I think it was more of them. It's like, we cannot process these cases that are coming in. So I think that's a really well-founded problem. Now, it is available. This is sort of what threw me off, is that this program is available as long as you relinquished your citizenship sometime after March 18th, 2010. I don't know why that day was picked. That sounds interesting. I don't know.
Because that was the day that FATCA was signed into
FATCA
law.
came into
Oh, that was the day FATCA was signed into law. Wow.
That's why.
Okay.
That's why.
Interesting. Okay. Now, but John, you're saying this is something you can use prospectively. This is not just if you relinquish, but this is something that could be part of your overall strategy to sort of avoid being part of the U.S. tax code.
Well, okay. So I think it's actually an excellent program for people who don't have a Social Security number, have relatively simple situations, want to renounce U.S. citizenship, and want the comfort of having signed out, gone out the front door rather than the side door, perhaps. There's a lot of really, really attractive. That is, now if you decided that you want to, tie up the tax compliance thing, there are a lot of great features to this program. Uh, Obviously with the usual caveat that you always hear that you're non-willful, okay, but accidental Americans obviously clearly qualify as that, okay. But the first thing that's great about it is that you file basically 6 years at once. So you're not into this in any kind of long-term thing. Secondly, they're actually forgiving up to, I guess, $24,999.99 worth of tax liability, which is a great thing because a lot of people, as you know, Anthony, and Streamline and that sort of thing, have snippets, buckets of taxes owed, here and there sort of thing. I would encourage anybody who's thinking about this to take a very good look at the FAQs on this. One of the things that I find interesting, and I can't believe that this is a mistake because this has been vetted by a lot of people, is that on the one hand, it's the first time I've ever seen the IRS take the position that a foreign mutual fund is a PFIC and requires an 8621. But in their example, they're acknowledging that and I suggest anybody listening to this, please read this on your own. But they seem to be acknowledging that somebody could have a foreign mutual fund, not declare the income as PFIC income, not file the 8621, and still use the program. And that is really, really incredible stuff, from a compliance point of view. So I think that for people to use it prospectively is well worth considering. You don't go out and get a Social Security number,
No.
which is a great thing. But you do have to watch out on the 2 million net worth thing, okay? Because you can't have 2 million at the time that you relinquish and at the time that you file, which it's kind of an interesting point. But prospectively, I think that has tremendous possibilities from the point of view of the people who, renounce and then using it to clean up loose ends. Well, there are people who worry and worry and worry. And if you're a worrier, I think it's probably a good idea, so you don't worry. But I certainly think that the main use of it is prospective.
Now, one requirement, so this is really something where it truly seems like it is for the accidental American, because one requirement is you have no filing history as a U.S. citizen or resident. Now, was there one exception to that? If you filed,
yeah, there is. If
there's the but, right? There's the but.
A lot of people, no, it's not even really a but. And I've had people like this who, have believed they're not U.S. citizens and have filed a 1040 NR. What it says, if you filed a 1040 NR with a good faith belief that you weren't a citizen, then it doesn't count. You're still free to use the program.
Because when you filed that return, it was not you admitting that you were a U.S. citizen.
Of course not. In fact, you were taking a clear position that you were not.
Right, so you're acting very consistent.
On the other hand, okay, I think it's very unlikely that somebody who, was taking the position they weren't a U.S. citizen filed a 1040 NR would do this. But I have, I've seen pockets of this sort of problem over the years.
So let me pose a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
As a devil's advocate here, John. So let's say I'll just say the accidental American is above the $25,000 threshold. What should they do in that instance?
Well,
this program would not be.
Of course, they can't use the program. If they want to do the tax compliance thing, then I think they would consider streamlined, wouldn't they?
And I would say this is pretty critical to make sure you can apply for it, not just do it because, let me tell you this way. So I'll just say this. The Streamlined Disclosure Program has very specific rules, but I can tell you those rules are bent all the time. Those rules are bent where people didn't really qualify for one thing or another, but the IRS also sort of gives a wink to say, yeah, you know what, we don't want to bother with a full OVDP or audit, so you know what, looks good enough to us. I would say this, we don't have the history on this program that we do with Streamline, but we've had that for 4.5 years or 5.5 years. If you don't qualify and you file these 6 returns, guess what? The IRS is going to process the returns. And they threaten to hit you with all the foreign informational penalties, which $10,000 is a good start.
How could somebody get into this and not qualify? The requirements are, I think, very, very clear. Obviously, okay, when you go to somebody to help you with this, the first step is to do the returns and see what they really look like. Yep. Before doing it. I think that that this is a theoretical problem and not a real problem. If somebody has lied and there's evidence all over the place that they're willful, then I think perhaps you have a problem. But nobody should hold me to the next statement I'm about to make, okay? But I don't think the IRS is even going to look at the damn things.
I do, and that is the streamlined submissions are processed. It's not given that level of scrutiny that the IRS auditor would have, and that's absolutely true. Now, I would say this: we're going to be discussing in our next video. We're going to be going over some hypotheticals because I think we could really tease out a lot of these issues. And that point that John just made about about whether someone filed or didn't qualify, I do have a hypothetical that will sort of address that very specific issue. So I'm going to advise you to subscribe because we will be discussing this in the very next video, and you'll be one of the first to find out when it goes live. This is Anthony Parent of IRS Medic, and I thank you for joining me today. And again, I thank John and Keith for their input, and you can look forward to hearing more from them in the next video. Thanks for watching.